What's going on, everybody? It's gonna be a one big video. It's probably gonna end up getting broken up into a couple. So we have an Eclipse 3, we have some impact mesh. This is gonna be really fun. But I'm gonna try to make a Obi-Wand tutorial out of a complete string with me. This is string with me number 8. We're gonna do a mid-high pocket in this Eclipse 3, and let's get after it. Okay, so here we have the scoop of the Eclipse 3. Oh, you know what? Let's get some of that background light going. Maybe that'll help a little bit. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got my mesh. I'm choosing to to start on the 12 diamond end of the actual mesh itself. I'm going to fold over 2 rows. So the 11 diamond row and the 12, there's one 11 diamond row and one 12 diamond row that are folded over onto one another. Okay. This is effectively this is an 11 diamond top string. The Obi-Wand Topstring is an 11 diamond top string, like all of my goalie top strings. And as I have said in previous, I did one of the other string with me's when I did a Eclipse. Sorry, no, the impact, the ECD impact. It's as far as the scoop is concerned, everything remains the same. When I change from one mesh to another, depending upon what my type of mesh it is, will dictate where I tie it off. Generally for Eclipse, keep screwing that up. Generally for impact mesh, I'm going to be tying off on the 4th hole down on the sidewall. So as you can kind of see, I'm holding, I know this is a little bit different for how you see it. I've got 2 rows over like this. I am going to flip the mesh in this way. So you see me coming, the mesh is, the bottom of the mesh is down by the throat. And I'm going to, or at least I'm going to try to get it to sit there so you can see this from the tutorial perspective. So the edge of the mesh is now closest to this back. The end of the mesh is on the camera side from where you can see. So I'm going to pick the 6th hole in the middle from either side using the color. There's 3 holes in the middle from these 2 black striker lines. So I'm going to be starting, just like anything else, any other top string, I'm going to be starting from the middle. I'm going to shift. When I talk about shifting the mesh, hopefully you, oh Jesus, my head was in the way the entire time. So, or at least some of the time. So I'm going to shift the mesh up so you can see that the holes are not totally floating. They're halfway from being, if there's the 11 diamond row and the 12 diamond row sitting on top of one another, I'm shifting it so the 11 diamond row is just a little bit up. And hopefully you can see that. That spot right there in the middle underneath where my finger is going to sit, that is where I'm going to start. I already have my top string cut. So I'm going to go back to front through the center hole in the center hole in the scoop. I'm going back to front. Now, this middle hole is important. These 3 holes of the mesh right there in white, those are the 3 that I'm going to be doing the hidden top string in the same way that ECD does on their factory strung impact heads. I'm only doing it for the Obi-Wand top string for only 3 holes here. So I'm going, remember, this is the back of the head, this is the front, this is the back of the mesh, this is the front of the mesh. I'm going back to front and then front to back through these 2 holes that I created by shifting the mesh upwards, shifting this tip of the mesh up, and then I'm going back front to back again, back through that hole in the middle. So you can hopefully see with the contrast where that is done. Now I am just going to let that hang while I make sure that the string is centered. Up. We're going to get there. Okay. So I don't need the mesh to be sitting up here. You know what? Just for the sake of it, I'm going to put something so that the mesh will stay. So I've got, so this is why you have to pay attention. I just went through the wrong hole. So double checking, always double check your work. You never want to get You always want to be checking constantly so you don't get all the way through it. You're like, oh, I definitely am not centered. Okay, so now the string is centered. I want that bridge in between those, like the two holes where the string went through. I want that bit right there in the middle of the mesh to be sitting right on the front side of this hole on the scoop. Okay, so hopefully you can be able to see this. I'm going to be going through those two holes and those two holes for these two holes of the mesh and these two holes of the mesh for these two holes in the plastic. But I'm not going to try to pull, I don't want to pull that mesh through the plastic. It's not necessary. I don't need to do it. But I do want it to be pulled snug up to the plastic. So I'm going to go back to front through that hole and pull it all the way through. Back to front through this hole and pull that all the way through. I'm going to do this hole, these through here, and then I'm going to do that one, and then I'm going to finish this side. And then once I've finished and tied off this side, then I'm going to finish and tie off the last side, talking through all of the bits that I need to worry about. So right now, I'm just kind of wrapping my hands around, keeping tension on this side right here. Trying to make it so that you can see what I do. So the same way that I went back to front and front to back through the middle hole, I'm going to be doing that here. Before I come back through the mesh, the plastic again, I'm just kind of pulling off this way just to make sure the mesh is sitting over kind of where it should. Great thing about impact mesh is it stretches out more than just about anything but Grizzly 2. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side here. Back to front through the mesh, front to back there again, pull it over the side. Make sure that the mesh, I want the mesh to basically sit where I want it to, and then front to back again through the plastic. Now, as you can see, I've wrapped the string around my hand. This is where I pull laterally like this. Normally I don't do this, but for the sake of this tutorial, I want you to see kind of where I'm at. Whoops. So maybe I'll try and move it so you can see it a little bit better. That's basically how I want the mesh to sit for now. I do not have to worry, I pulled everything super tight to make sure that the mesh effectively sits in the same place. As I go in one direction and then go and finish in the other direction, whatever side I go in, like if I start over here, I finish this side first, this side's going to loosen up a little bit. I don't need to worry about keeping tension in that the entire time because I will re-tension it when I start going that side after I've tied this one off. So let's get back over here. Now this can be the difficult part moving forward. I am going to continue keeping everything somewhat shifted. I'm not going through these big holes. I'm not going through the big hole of the two folded over rows. I'm shifting it and I'm going through one hole like that all the way through. So next thing I'm going to do, going in this direction, I'm going to go back to front through that hole. So I've gone 1, 2, 3, and then so it's from the middle 1, 2 in this direction. Now I'm going to use each of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 of these. So I'm going to be going front to back through the mesh, moving forward in that direction. So front to back here. I'm going to be pulling that over just to make sure that that's nice and tight. Now, moving forward, I'm going to keep some tension in this. I'm going back to front through the last hole in the scoop on this side. So I'm going to go front to back through that second hole of the black hole of mesh. So remember, that's one hole and that's 2 holes that I've gone through there. I'm going to pull that a little bit tighter. I want to keep tension. I don't have to be pulling it. I don't want to be pulling it as tight as possible. but I am trying to keep tension. Now, these fuller holes down here, these are the sidewall holes that I'm going to be going through. I'm going to be going outside in through all of these. So I'm going to go outside in through the next one, front to back through that next hole of mesh. It's still, the mesh is still folded over. Outside in through the next hole down on the sidewall, or the second, front to back through the next folded over hole in the mesh. You can see how those lines are starting to look nice and pretty. I'm going to do this one more time here. So I'm going outside in through the third hole down in the sidewall. Hopefully you can zoom in. Can't recommend enough. Watch this on YouTube. Watch it on a big TV if you can. Now, as you can see, for every top string on a 12 diamond piece of mesh in a goalie head, I am always, it's on the 11 diamond row, but it's effectively a 9 diamond top string, because hole number 1 and hole number 11 on either side, whichever way you count, are getting bunched up with hole number 2 and hole number 10. So I am going outside in through the fourth hole in the sidewall. That's one more time. I'm going to go like that. I'm not going through the small holes anymore. I'm going through the big holes. So if this is hole number 1 and that's hole number 2, I'm going front to back through 2. Now this is basically where I double loop to pull the top string over to. So now you can see there's that hole. I'm not going to go through that one. I'm just going to kind of bunch that up where it is. I'm going to go outside in through that same sidewall hole number 4, front to back through that same hole again. There's effectively, I'm just pulling that, making sure that's all of this stays nice and tight. I'm going to go outside in one more time. So now it looks like I've got that double loop, but I just went outside in. So how do I finish? What I've started doing recently, and I really like how this has worked out, I'm going to go inside out. This especially works with, I'm doing a top string here with 275 paracord. You can still do it with 550 paracord. These holes in the Eclipse 3 are big enough that you can go through it a bunch of times. So I'm going to go inside out through sidewall hole number 3, making sure that stays tight. I'm going to go back to front through that same hole number, effectively hole number 2. So back to front, inside out through sidewall plastic hole number 3. One more time, back to front through mesh hole number 2. And then I just got to find the hole and go inside out. Make sure that's nice and tight. So I've effectively double loop finished my top string. I've got plenty of extra string, which is my what I want to do. I am 6'2", but just call it, like, you know, if you want to pull, I pull 6 feet. So, you know, if you need to measure yourself a 6 feet wide string, and that, you know, so for 6 feet here, you can see it all, like this is how much extra. So if I'm 6'2" and I pull 6'2", or you pull 6 feet, like, you know, you're cutting off an inch on either side. There's more than enough. The reason why I do this is so I can get all the way to the end, and if I need to, I can wrap it a bunch of times to pull as tight as I need to. But that knot will sit. I could get that knot a little tighter, but with so many wraps with 2 double loop finishes, whatever extra I can pull off of there, if I pull it really tight, I mean, I've got maybe a centimeter from the knot is maybe a centimeter. By the time the young man who is getting this stick plays with it, that knot will be cinched into the plastic itself. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing over here on this side, although I'm going to do it a little bit quicker, just to kind of finish at least this aspect of the video. So I don't want to always necessarily, it's not just about pulling in this direction. I also want to make sure I'm pulling down towards the bottom of the head, just to make sure that the mesh is sitting exactly where it should. I'm looking at the tension of these. Does it look similar? Does it look the same? If there's any noticeable difference, like I want to look at this and I want to look at this and I'll be like, oh, this side looks just like that side. If one side is noticeably looser, then you might need to pull the string out of a certain one hole, two holes, maybe. You want to make sure that this is the same. This looks tight. It's going to look different. It's going to be looked pulled down, because remember this, even though I stretch the mesh wide with my hands, I have not broken the mesh in. That obviously comes a little bit later. So if this is hole number 2 that I went through, I did the double loop tie off. I'm doing this one on hole number 10. Hopefully this will be good enough and I can replace put this on my Instagram. Okay, so there we go. There is our Liberty top string tutorial. So now my head is gonna come into the thing. So what I'm looking at right now, you can see my head. I am trying to look in here, and I can't really. I can try to get you to see it with the camera. The last thing that I do before I move on is I want to make sure that these 2 spots right here that you can see, make sure I'm gonna go the right way here. I want this mesh, the mesh is being pulled down a little bit, and it's also being pulled wide. So you want, I'm trying to hold on to this, and I gotta look at the screen to make sure it looks even. So these 2 loops that you can see right now, I want to make sure that those look about the same. I can make tiny adjustments. This one, obviously the one in the very center should be pulled the closest, but the fact that these are not pulled immediately super tight all the way to the plastic, totally fine. Regardless, it's all going to look a little bit different once I end up breaking the mesh in and pounding the pocket at the very end. Okay, so that is where the Obi-Wand Topstring tutorial is going to end. I will cut that off, and I will cut that and turn that into a different video.